before we get to today's heated topic, let's take a cool look at the facts. Do you think we're stretching that kind of idea enough? Probably. How much energy does air conditioning use? What about emissions? What even is aircon anyway? Well, Robert Gross is director of UKERC, that's the UK Energy Research Centre, also Professor of Energy Policy and Technology at Imperial College London.
Air conditioning is a bit like a fridge. You've got a refrigerant, which is, it wants to be a gas, but you compress it, you force it to be a liquid. The bit at the back of the fridge gets cold, inside the fridge that is. And if you ever go and look at the dusty bit around the back of your fridge, you'll find there's a load of fins and they all get hot. So effectively this refrigerant, it moves the heat out of the inside of the fridge and it allows it to dissipate at the back of the fridge. An aircon works in very much the same way. The standard aircon that you might see in an apartment if you're on holiday, there's a fan in your room somewhere or a little unit in your room. That's a bit like the inside of the fridge unit. And what you probably don't see is outside, there's a similar sized thing. So the inside unit will get cold and the outside unit gets hot. People might say, well, what about one of those portable aircons? Because that hasn't got an outside unit. Well, one of the reasons those are noisy and not very efficient is because they kind of put the hot bit and the cold bit next to each other. And then you dangle a kind of big hose thing out of the window and it tries to blow the warm air away.
You said the E word, efficiency. Are they getting better over time, or are we generally dealing with the same kind of designs we've had for decades?
They have got much more efficient. The other thing it's really important to say, which might surprise some people, is an air conditioning unit is a heat pump. So we all think heat pumps are wonderfully efficient at providing heating in the winter, which they are, but it's basically the same technology. Older air conditioning units are for sure less efficient and didn't really provide a winter heating function. But if you were to go and buy a professionally installed air conditioning unit for your house, it would provide you with cooling in the summer and heating in the winter, and it would do so very efficiently.
Clearly, it isn't necessarily something that we've needed in huge numbers until things have started getting a bit more tricky with the heat waves. But I mean, how do we know how widely used aircon is in the UK?
We know quite a lot about how much aircon is installed in commercial buildings.
Yeah.
The data aren't great in this country for residential use. But just to give you a kind of sense of it, there's a government report, it's about 5 years old, it's the most detailed source for now, and that's placing the total commercial use at 6 terawatt hours. Nobody knows what that means.
No.
But we use about 250, 300 terawatt hours of electricity in total in a year, so about 2% in the commercial sector. I mean, I recently saw a Uswitch report that said 4 million houses have some sort of aircon unit. That seems on the high end to me. But even if that's right, if they were all using them through a heat wave quite a lot of the time, 1% of electricity,
Okay,
something like that.
And presumably that's very low when you compare internationally.
Australia, the US, 90% of houses have aircon.
And the percentage of energy consumption in those
kinds of countries, 15 to
Really?
20, maybe even 25% of total electricity is the aircon load. And just to give you a sense of the order of magnitude, obviously America's a much more populous and larger country. Their electricity use for aircon alone is more than our total electricity.
Is it really?
Yeah.
How prepared are we for what we assume is going to be ever-growing demand then?
The demand growth for electricity is widely anticipated and being planned for, but it's mainly because we think we're going to have a lot more electric vehicles and because we're going to be using heat pumps to provide us with heat. So the demand growth that we're likely to see for air conditioning is probably not a big problem, and that might be surprising to some listeners. There are some exceptions. We're currently sitting in central London. Demand peak is already in the summer, and that's because we're surrounded by offices and they've all got aircon. So parts of the system, we need to be anticipating demand growth. The wider system and people putting them in their houses, I don't think that is where the big problem will lie.
What is the impact of aircon in terms of emissions?
aircon runs on electricity. Our electricity grid used to be dominated by coal. We've built lots of renewables, so our grid is increasingly clean. During the summer in particular, we've got lots of solar and we've got more electricity than we need. If you look around Europe, it's a mixed picture. So France, lots of nuclear, that's clean. They, like us, have relatively low penetration of air conditioning, but let's assume that their demand for air conditioning will grow. That will be largely met by nuclear. The implications for emissions are modest. Spain, Italy, they've already got more aircon, and their grids are a bit more mixed. They've also been building out renewables. They tend to burn more gas. Spain still burns a bit of coal. So there's an emissions impact. Basically, the short version is the more old-fashioned or dirty your grid is, the more adding aircon is going to increase emission.
Well, our thanks to Rob Gross. Sam, let's start with you on this. I mean, lots of interesting detail there